Thank you everyone for joining today's session. Uh, Today we are going to look something which is many team is working with Sitecore AI now. So you will see, as you know, with the recent announcement, XM Cloud has been renamed with Sitecore AI, right? And about myself, I'm Ritesh. I work as a VP of Engineering at Icreon, right? Leading the DXP practice here. Have been associated with Sitecore community almost 8 years now. And in today's session, we'll try to deep dive around how to run your ASP.NET Core application, where if you see in today's world, it's more around JavaScript, more on the JavaScript framework. This is more to .NET native. So we'll talk more into technicality. And I have with me Arun, who will be joining. Arun, please introduce
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah, sure. Thank you. So, hi everyone. Myself, Arun Kumar. I am working with Icreon as a senior site core architect. So, I have total 15 plus years of experience and around 8 plus years of experience in site core. I have worked on 20 plus site core projects, which include XP, XM, as well as Sitecore XM Cloud project. I have done the certification in XM Cloud, CDP, Personalize, and currently I live in Delhi. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Arun. So to start with on the session, what we are trying to cover today is uh, all the people who are architects and developers. The goal here is to do a deeper dive into what is the practical understanding, how to build, host, deploy, and prepare ASP.NET Core rendering host for Sitecore AI. So far, you have you all have worked in last couple of years. It's more composable architecture, headless architecture, where you have your front end application written on your JavaScript libraries, right? But from last uh, now we are in the situation where the organizational are heavy on the .NET side, right? So Sitecore also XM Cloud or Sitecore AI also now started supporting the ASP.NET Core website, right? And this is the rendering portion of the application is fully on .NET, right? So the goal of this session is to talk through how to leverage, how to implement. It will be more into demonstration, showing it how you can build your application in a ASP.NET and connect with your Sitecore AI or Sitecore XM Cloud. Right. So that's what the goal we are trying to achieve as part of today's session. So the first question is like there are a lot of options available. What is the trigger, right? When you want to really choose ASP.NET Core SDK for your implementation, right? So if you see the bigger organization where you have like bigger organization, they have dependencies or bigger presence around the .NET and Microsoft stack, right? They are heavily uh, business domain driven, lot of integration needed, a lot of services are there to integrate, right? So there's some of the trigger points which can be used and you can decide like when the you have a strong .NET or MVC or Razor related expertise in house, right? Where the project requires mostly server rendered architecture, like built on the uh, .NET pattern, right? The area is to core SDK is the right choice for your site core AI implementation because you are heavily dependent on .NET. Deeper integration is needed, right? And same point of time, you want to look for a development approaches which requires strong typing, your dependency injection and structure backend logic. So if these are the situation, these are some of the trigger point which you can choose architecturally, right, to use this approach, right? So it's not like you have to use it, but it's a specific use case, right? based on the project need and business need. You can take a call how to when to use, when not to use, right? With regards to some of the key concept which we'll talk through today, like how's the rendering middleware works, what how the model binding happens, different type of views, tag helper. There is a concept of multi-site middleware and other components. So during this presentation, we'll talk about this component, this technical aspect of it, which will help you to understand better, like how to leverage this particular approach. In terms of architecture, I'll quickly just go to this diagram, right? This slide talks about ASP.NET architecture. It's a typical ASP.NET core framework works at the back end, right? And the standard convention like HTTP request. So if you see, you got your web browser, you have your running ASP.NET core application, and the experience age is more around your XM Cloud or Sitecore AI, right? Which gives you a data in form of GraphQL or as a JSON response. So what typically happens, you all have must have worked like this piece of the application is mostly built on React or Next or any other latest JavaScript framework, right? But in this situation, what Sitecore started supporting is build this application in .NET itself, right? This piece layer. So mainly head you are building into ASP.NET. So it's a typical HTTP request which comes from your browser. You hit from the front end side, and the response which comes from the experiences. This portion remains same the way it works currently, right? The only thing we are talking about replacing some of the newer option to integrate with the ASP.NET core application. So that's typical HTTP request gets the data from your site code backend, right? It comes the data and you render the page on web. This is very conceptual and high level, right? But when you, I'm not sure if you're able to see this, but I'll try to cover. So this is a more deeper flow, which we talks about what happens at the ASP.NET core application level, right? So this is your site core. In the previous diagram, this was like more at the high level. On this one, if you talk about, you have request coming in, it goes to your standard middleware, right? Then you have a rendering engine middleware, and then the actual rendering, which takes the data from site core layout service, right? So this diagram mainly talks about when you receive the request. At this point of time, when the middleware layer you see here, it hits to your layout service endpoint, right, to get the data. And this layout service client, this is responsible to integrate with your experience edge endpoint, right? So the within the ecosystem of ASP.NET core application, there is something called layout service client, which communicates to experience edge. And once you have the response, then you start rendering your context for your browser, right? So this is more deeper flow into it. There is a this information is also available on the Sitecore official documentation, right? So what it does is you it gets the data, you invoke the action. I'm not sure if you're readable for you guys, but normally this goes in the process when uh, we get the response back from the site core when it receives the layout client to start binding all the responses and rendering into the front end, right? So, and at the end of all these model binding, when the data gets binded from the UI perspective, it gets response back to as a HTML to your front end. So in terms of integration, this is the user's web browser, and within the ASP.NET core, you have different layers where one layer is responsible of fetching the data from Sitecore, and your rendering layer makes sure that the data which is coming from Sitecore and the layout which we have from front end perspective gets binded at the rendering layer, and response is returned by your rendering engine middleware, right? So that's what the key architecture around uh, within the ASP.NET Core application, right? So this is what the important thing to understand, right? And we'll see during the demo like how it works. Feel free to stop if you have any question in between. Now that's the architecture with regards to people in the lobby. If somebody wants to prove it on the on the multi-site middle. So there is a concept of multi-site middleware as well on this approach. And what happens is on the multi-site middleware, where the the rendering layer, right, it decide uh, based on like where to route the request, and this is something very clearly understandable using this particular diagram. So what happens here is when we receive an incoming request, it's check for what is the context exist, right? And it retrieves the site from iSite resolver namespace, right? And based on that, it decide which site needs to be uh, rendered. Like based on the context, it identified the site, and if there are a multi-site approach, suppose when I say multi-site, the scenario is more around within the same instance you have multiple site running. There is a one default main site, but you want to have a different site rendering. So that decision makes here like if it is not resolved by it is not default, then it will go to that particular site. So this is also an inbuilt capability, right, of the ASP.NET Core application, which internally decide how to resolve the incoming request, right, and route to user to the right URL. So this is also a very interesting and important concept which is being honored. Quickly on, so we talked about what is the scenario where we want to use this. We talked about how the flow works, right? Also, how there is some key concept, and we'll see in the demo as well. But in terms of benefit, right, the goal of this particular framework is align more into ASP.NET Core ecosystem, right? People, there are skills available. Like if somebody is from your .NET background and wants to continue building application and .NET, so this is the right framework to use, right? It also give you a give you an ability to have more complex, backend driven implementation, right? The some places it's not like you need SSG kind of environment. Sometimes you need a solid real time data connection, but you have a strong business logic written at the back end, right? So those are the benefits you can get where it's .NET heavy, business logic heavy, API heavy kind of scenario, right? And mostly it is tricky. One of the disadvantage I would say is like if you want to use the latest feature SSG, SSR, ISR, those kind of things, that has a little bit of limitation here, but it is more on the business logic side. What are the prerequisite to run that .NET Core 8.0 SDK, right? That's the minimum core requirement you have, right? And other Visual Studio 22 plus, right? You can also run this on the Docker images, but that's optional. But anybody wants to run in the .NET, the Docker setup is also a recommendation you can use. I'll skip this one. We'll see in the demo because demo gonna take time, right? So let's quickly jump into the demo. Arun, want to cover that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. Thank you. So let
Meanwhile,
me share
Arun is
my.
sharing. If you have any questions, we can talk through that, or we can take questions at the end as well.
So yeah, let me know once my screen is visible.
Yeah, this was
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Okay. So to start with, the Sitecore.net Core SDK for the headless application development. We have some prerequisites, and we these are the steps we can use to set up the project in our local environment. So I hope most of you have worked on the Sitecore XM Cloud environment. So let me tell you how we can set up the project in XM Cloud and how we can start our development in the local environment. So to start with the development, so first of all, we need to Sitecore has created a startup kit, startup.net project. We can fork this project, or we can just clone this repository at our local. So So here I have just cloned this repository in my local. And after that, we can go to the Sitecore XM Cloud Deploy app. And here we can set up the project and we can set up the repository here. After setting the project, we can create the environment. So I have already created the environment.net core. So if I click here, so same way, if you guys worked on the XM Cloud implement, then we need to follow the same step. There is no difference in the Sitecore XM Cloud app deployment setup and in the Sitecore app setup in the Sitecore CMS environment. So same way, I have set up everything in the setup site in the Sitecore XM Cloud deployment app, and these are the variables which we use later to run the application in the local environment. So now after cloning the code and setting the deploy app in the XM Cloud deploy app, let's move to the CM instance. And here, just go to the content editor, and we can start with setting up the headless site collection. First, we create a folder, and inside that folder, we can create the headless app. And if we are working on the multi-site architecture, then we can create multiple tenants and multiple apps based on the requirement. So this is the Sitecore headless app we have already set up in the environment. And next step is to create the component. So the process of creating of component remains same as we do in the XM Cloud implementation, Next.js implementation. So to do that, I will just quickly go through these steps, how we can create the component in XM Cloud. So go to the system setting and foundation. So once you create the app, these folders will automatically created, scaffold automatically with the name of the collection. So headless core is the collection name. So automatically this folder is created. Now we need to create a component. So just click on the feature folder, and here is a headless module. Just click on a headless module, and it will ask some information. So we can select, basically this module will scaffold the folder with the name of the module name. So we can select the places where we want to create these folders, and we can just, because this is we are creating a component for the site, so we can unselect the tenant setup. Reason being, this is we cannot use the component on the tenant level. So we can unselect this checkbox from here, and we can provide the name, and we can, reason being, we are using the helix format, helix design pattern, so we can create the folder structure accordingly, and we can select the location where we want to create the module. So for now, uh, I have created a component with the name hero component. So once this module is created, so next step is to create the rendering and template. So to do that, we can go to the layout, rendering, feature, and headless. So we can use the promo component as a base component, and we can just click on this component, and there is an option in the script, and we can click on the clone rendering. So it will automatically create a same structure, same template as per the existing promo component. So I have done everything already for the hero component, and I have set up everything, fields and component name, everything is in the template. So for example, this is our component, hero component, and in hero component we have four fields like title, description, hero image, CTA, right? And we have also set up the component. We also created the rendering based on that, based on this template. So now our module is our component is created from the Sitecore side. So now it's time to use that component in the presentation layer. So to do that, first of all, we need to install that component. To install that component, just click on the core POC root of the site, and in script option we have a option to add site module. So basically it will show the list of all the module which is not installed. So for example, currently these modules are not installed. Reason being, I have already set up all the POC, and so this module is already installed for this core POC app. So after setting this, we can just go to the presentation, and we can add the component in the final layout. So I have just added that component and created the data source. So this is our data source, right? So this is the same process we follow in the Next.js implementation, means headless implementation with the Next.js, right? So till now the process is the same. Now how we can use this component or view this component with the help of the Sitecore.net rendering, .NET Core rendering. So for that, let's go to the solution, or the open the solution, and for the repository which we have cloned from the starter kit provided by the Sitecore. So this is the structure. So if you go to the structure, this is the default controller which handle all the requests, and these are the collection extension where we can define our view renderings for the engines, rendering engines, and these are the components, right? And these are the models, and these are the views. So and program.cs is the startup entry point of this project. So to start the development, first we need to set up some configuration and to run the application. So for that, we need some information like edge context ID, default site name, editing secret. Editing secret is used, reason being, when we run this application, we will use this URL in the page editor. So when we want to run this application in page editor, so this editing secret is required to exchange the information between the local app and the page editor. This is the editing mode, if we allow the editing mode and editing path. So these are the basic information we can set up here. If we want to run, so after setting this application, now next step is to create the components right here. So there are three ways basically to create the component in XM Cloud. So first way is model view, which is called model bound view, right? And second is the view component, and third is the partial view. So what is the difference between these three types, right? So partial view is basically a component which doesn't have any controller. There is no backend logic for that. So basically, there is no relation with the XM Cloud in that. So we can use the partial component where, like, for example, if for the micro component, for example, if we are using button, we are using image, and image is using basically in multiple components. So we want to put some logic on the basic micro component on image or on button. some condition. So we can create a micro component and we can pass the data to that partial view, right? From any view, any model bound view or any view component. So on the basis of that logic, that we will render the button, view, or card, anything which is the shareable component in many places. So that is the partial component. So next is the model bound view. So model bound view is basically, this is a basically this render the content from with the help of controller, but it it is not, we are not managing this. Basically, Sitecore .NET SDK will automatically handle the backend logic and map the all the Sitecore component field with this model, provided model. And third is the view component. But is the purpose of view component? It is same, but in this view component we can extend the control logic. We can extend the backend logic. For example, if we have a component, some fields we are getting from the backend, means from the site core, and we want to extend the logic, some put some logic in that component. So to extend that logic, we will create a view components. So basically these three types of view components available in the Sitecore .NET SDK. So now we have created a hero component. So to do that, we will just create a model with the same structure. So this is the, we have created a model. Base model is already available. So in base model, we have these properties: ID, component name, grid parameter, default properties, which is available. And we are just extending our component with our component, hero component, with the help of base model. And we will just add our property which is created in the site core. So for basic component, that's it. So we, there is no need to put write any controller or put any logic. Reason being, site core SDK automatically map the site core component field with this, and this model is used in the so this model, after creating the model, we will create a component in the means in a view CSM view HTML CSHTML in the views folder. So here we can pass this model hero component, and we can use this property to render this component. Just simple. So there is no need to write the any controller, anything. So it will automate, it is automatically handled by the SDK itself. So this is the one way. So same way, I have created one more component. Let me show you. Weather component. So basically in weather component, we have one field. We have the image field, and we will just we in the code we will call API, weather API, which will pull the data from the cloud server and just return, add the additional information with this component. So same way we have created the view model in the models folder. So this is our model extended extended from the base model. This is the this is the field, image field, which we have created in the site core, and this is the additional model which field which we have created. Means this is the JSON data which we get from the server. So this is the second way. So now, yeah. So now these are the setting. Though both components are set up from our end. Now we can run this application. To run this application, we have two ways to. So first we can use the, this is the feature available in Sitecore 2022. We can create the dap tunnels. Dap tunnels is basically if we want to run the localhost environment on the public URL. So we can use the dap tunnel. So you can create a dap tunnel. You can give the name of dap tunnel. It's a temporary or persistent, and it will create a public URL for you to expose this URL, local URL, to the public with the public URL. So now I have already created a dap tunnel. So I just selected the dap tunnel. Now let's start this application. Yeah, one more thing till the time it is running. So once after after creating a model and view, we need to register these component model view bind and view components in the programs startup file. So if you it's on this, it is just starting the dev tunnel. It will take few minutes. Yeah. So now, so we need to register our components and partial view in the services build startup program file services. So to register the model bound view and component, we can just add new model bound view, and we will just provide the component name and the view name. And for view component, we can just provide the component name. And to register the partial views, we can just directly add the partial view here in the program.css. So this is required to use these components here. And we also discussed the multi-site setting. So we can enable the localization, multi-site. We can enable these here if we don't want the multi-site. We are not using multi-site architecture. Then we can remove these extension points here from here. So it will use as a single standalone application. So now, if we open the URL, just a moment. So now you can continue. Actually, lots of things are running on my system, so it is taking some time. Yeah, it's stopped on the breakpoint. Continue. See, so this is we can see the home page here, and these are the components. So this is the component hero component. This is the image hero component 11 test description and link, right? And this is the another component. See, so let me show you how we can call the uh, custom if we want to extend our logic. So weather view component. So I'm just adding a breakpoint here. You can see. So here, basically this invoke function, this provides us the default model, which is written by the Sitecore. So after returning this model, we can extend, create our model and pass it to the view. And we have called this API. And after getting the response from API, we have just added this property in the view model, and we are just passing this model to the view. So you go to view, If you go to view, we can use this model and we can render the data as per the requirement. We are just rendering the weather information. We have just created a partial view as well for the weather text. We want to show the image which we are coming from the site core as well. So for that we have created a partial view. So if we go to the partial view, we can here render the site core related information which is coming from the site core. So all the scenario is covered here. So we so uh, this is the running view of the application. Now how we can run this application, run this URL in the backend or page editor. So to do that, just copy this URL, go to site core, and you need to create a rendering host. I have already created the rendering host. You just need to update the URL here. This, this. Yeah. After setting this, you can you can create a new one as per the requirement. And once you create a new rendering host, so in application, you can choose the editing host which you want to select for this. So just click on the local host default, save it. Now just go to the page builder. Just check. Uh, okay, I think reason being the dev tunnel require the authentication. That's why it is not getting rendered. So we can directly run on the localhost URL. So this is the our localhost URL, and we can change the rendering default rendering host to default. Just refresh it. And I think it's running 64212 output. 64212 44386. Let me. Yeah. Okay. So I need to change the URL here. So now if you see, we can see the page from the local environment to the in the page editor. So you can perform the same activities, inline editing, same thing which we mostly do in the Next.js for the Next.js implementation. So this is our component. We can just update here. If we say wait, we can also view instantly on the live URL. So see, this is, we can see the updated. So there are two ways we currently we are using the, there are two settings available. So let me show you. There are two context ID. One is the preview and one is the live. Preview means we are currently using or pulling the data from the CMS, and live context ID means once we publish the pages in the Sitecore, and we will pull the data from the Sitecore edge directly. So yeah, these are the settings, and this is the way how we can set up and configure the component in the Sitecore, and we can use the Sitecore XM Cloud with Sitecore.NET SDK. Yeah, that's it. Any question?
Yes, Arun. Uh, Basically, as you suggest, like we can copy the directory from GitHub and then we can deploy on a Sitecore. So, do we need any Sitecore licensing for that, or anything to deploy the keys that we are using in the project?
Yes, actually, we need a Sitecore uh, cloud environment. So that is the basically requirement for the site implementation, Sitecore.NET Core implementation.
Okay. So,
Reason
and
being,
that
reason being we are using, as we are using the earlier, we are using the Sitecore XM Cloud. Now it is renamed to Sitecore AI. So as we are doing it for the Next.js implementation, the same process we follow for the headless, for the Sitecore.NET Core SDK implementation.
okay. That's the only question. Thank you.
Okay.
Arun, you
So
can bring
Ranjay,
the slide back.
next is not needed for this project, right?
Yes, yes. There is no requirement of
All things
Next.js.
working with the .NET and Sitecore.
Yes, yes, correct. It is directly working using the Sitecore AI and Sitecore.NET Core
So
SDK.
if you see historically, like before this headless, right, we had traditional Sitecore MVC stuff, right? Architecture, anything. If you see like XP version of it, correct? Sitecore
Yeah,
XP
yeah.
that runs on your MVC
Mm.
architecture, but also you can build those uh, headless on using JSS. So from that MVC where you have .NET heavy implementation, we moved to historically we moved to headless. When I say headless, have a lighter JavaScript framework using React, Next, right? The front end what we built. Now, so the initial support was more around that JavaScript framework from Sitecore XM side. Now Sitecore also released this ASP.NET Core based application development, right?
Applications. Mm. That's
So
right.
in this scenario, you are building your front end or main front end application in your ASP.NET Core rather than building in a
Mm.
uh, Next or React, right? So that's the
That's
so their
yeah.
use case where you can most of the not most there are many organization which uses .NET as a primary
Yeah,
framework or
family
platform,
framework. Yes.
right?
Yes.
That's the reason they started supporting this. And .NET Core is something I would say not very new, but new also has a lighter
version than the traditional .NET. So that really helps giving the more coverage in terms of complex organization setup and the implementation.
Yes.
So yeah, let's that's all what we have for today's session. Right. Hope if there is any other question, we can talk through it. But yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If anyone else has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself. All right. If not, then if anything comes up later, I'm sure you can reach out to Ritesh or Arun offline. So, all right. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank you.
everyone for your time and have a great weekend. Thanks all.
Thank you so much for the session. Thanks everyone for attending. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.